Hello, my name is Rob Kinneen. I am the Outreach Director for NATIFS, North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems, and I am of Tlingit heritage. And with me...
Thank you. Dleka Kleinach Meda DeWitt, Yuchat Duasak, Tlingit Kleinach Zeitzinak, Yuchat Duasak, Nanyayina Chatsati, Kachadi Yadi Chatsati, Shtakin Kwan Ayachat. I said my English name is Meda DeWitt, my Tlingit names are Zeitzinak and Kataklat, and my families come from the Wrangell area as well as Yakutat. I am Nanyai, and today we are actually on Dena'ina Ethnena, so the traditional homelands of the Dena'ina people and the Eklutna tribe. We're grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play on Indigenous lands and spend time with the traditional plants of this area that are well known as food and medicine.
So today we're going to be making a ground bison salad with a sweet pea cake. Our ingredients today will be vegetable oil, onion, ground bison, chopped tomatoes not drained, canned or frozen corn, canned or frozen peas, and then we have 2 eggs. Our ingredients here are corn flour, which we're substituting for a gluten-free alternative, granulated garlic, salt, and baking powder. From the field today, to add a little bit of local flavor, we have sourdough, we have lovage, chives from the garden, and fiddlehead ferns. These have been pickled.
Looks delicious.
They're very exciting. Represented from the FDPIR box are vegetable oil, ground bison, chopped tomatoes, again, canned or frozen corn, canned or frozen peas, and it would be all-purpose flour is available from your box, but you can make these, which would be a gluten alternative to the cake. We're going to start with a bison salad. We're going to turn our heat on medium-high. So, medium-high heat, add the oil. And again, you're kind of working with your senses. So, 2 ways to tell if your pan is hot. One is feel it. Some people get nervous with that, but telltale needs a minute.
Oh, yeah. And what we're looking for are the bubbles around the onion, right? Is
Yep.
that because of the water that's in the onion?
Moisture's getting released, and now it's starting to kind of move, and that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, again, medium-high heat, thinking medium heat will cook it. If it's medium heat and you put all those onions, it'll cool the pan down.
Right.
So, with this, I think we're just looking for a little color, a little translucence on the onion, because when we're cooking this, we don't want that raw bite of the onion. You want to kind of get that sweetness sort of from the cooked onion and the texture.
So if you're looking for the color, it's a nice brown color.
Yeah.
And is that called caramelized, or are you just sweating the vegetables? Like, what level is it at?
Sweating would be kind of like if you're making a soup and you would want to cook it to the point where it kind of turns translucent or glassy. Caramelized is sort of, you got a nice brown kind of color to it. And so again, the onion is very starchy.
Right.
And you're kind of converting those starches to sugars in the cooking process. So as it breaks down, as the moisture goes away, it becomes that ambient sweetness to the onion.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I will do is just salt the onions a little bit. And mostly it's just to activate, again, pull some of the more the moisture out of the onion. So it's just going to, again, kind of expedite the cooking process on this. So I feel like we're almost getting to the point again. I know the onions are, they're kind of starting to look like a little glassy. When you're cutting something, let's say an onion, some people say, oh, well, is this too big or is this too small? The most important thing about dicing and slicing is consistency. Because if you have a big chunk of onion and a thin slice, one's going to be burned by the time one's half cooked.
Right.
So at least if they're all thick, you're going to kind of get to the finish line at the same time with these.
Well, I like to hear that because I know in my family, some people like the texture of smaller, sizes of food. And some family, I like chunky soup, right? Or chunky stew. So it's interesting that it doesn't really matter as long as it's all the same.
So I'm going to take it for granted here that, again, this is the first step of the cooking process. So we're going to add the bison, and we're going to still cook the bison. So I'm going to probably just turn the heat up just a touch because, again, we're adding the meat to a pan, cold meat to a pan. But I feel like these onions are also, they're far along in the cooking process to where we're going to get some good flavor from them, but still not have but not be raw. So let me go ahead and just drop this meat in. With bison, the FDPIR box is a commodity food box that represents all of Turtle Island, all of the federally recognized tribes in the country. And so, but like in the box is catfish, for example, or items where maybe manumin, which we talk about, but that doesn't mean, people outside of the Great Lakes region really know what to do with it.
Right.
And so there's this, a facet of the FDPIR program is the 638A Self-Determination Act. And what that means is that instead of having one box that represents all of the Turtle Island, we can, you have a chance to regionalize that box.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine getting a box where maybe you would find something like a dried lovage or rockfish instead of catfish, or a pickled fiddlehead fern instead of corn, you know? And I think that's kind of something that would be worth taking note. So if there is a conversation to be had, I mean, wouldn't it be great to be, swirling around, reindeer or elk or muskox?
Yes.
Right?
Now you're speaking my language. But I do have to say, we used to have buffalo in Alaska. We had wood bison that lived here. Even one of our traditional crests is the buffalo for our culture, and they've actually been reintroduced to the state.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and in our traditional knowledge, if you're eating food that is raised or grown in your region, it actually helps to attune you to that region. And part of that is because the plants and the animals have adaptations. So for instance, in the north, it's colder. So the way that they store fat, or the kind of fat that they have on them, is going to be slightly different than a place that is warm. And so that adaptation actually helps us to be more successful in our ecoregion.
So I think with this, we're looking pretty good. We've got a good little color. The onions, again, are like, you see how they kind of just like wavy? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just deglaze. And what that means is basically add so we strained. If you're using corn or peas, if they're frozen, you would kind of want to rinse them off a little bit. If they're canned, you'd want to strain them and release all the excess liquid. But with the tomato, I'm going to actually just kind of use the whole can with the chunks and the juice. And that's just going to add a layer of flavor here to this. So it's not a stew. It's kind of like a meaty kind of salad. Lovely sizzle. Always sounds like you know what you're doing.
So is that deglazing, from my understanding, you're bringing in the water-based liquid into the oil-based liquid. It lifts up anything that's sticking to the bottom and starts to mix it, the flavors in. Is that correct?
Yes. And the other part is that you're taking that tomato flavor and you're concentrating a little bit.
Okay, because it's going to evaporate some of the waters.
Yeah. It's going to be kind of a fancy taco salad is what it sort of looks like.
Oh man, we can get down with that.
Right? So we're going to add the corn.
Now I know it's going to be, you're saying that this is like a fancy taco salad, but this is very much looks like something that my mom would have cooked when I was young. Bringing in those canned or frozen vegetables that will retain the nutrients more than some of the fresh vegetables that, when we were young, took a really long time to get to Alaska.
Yep. So what I did is I cut the heat because, again, if it's frozen or canned, it's cooked. Now what I've got is the sourdough that we harvested. And you kind of talk about cooking it, but sort of adding so we're adding it now where you're going to get the residual heat to break it down, but still be vibrant enough to kind of get some of the nutrients and taste.
Yeah, and it's going to have a tangy flavor to it. It has vitamin C, so it's a delicious tang. And it's very young and fresh, so it does need some heat. So you're going to mix it in, and like you said, that residual heat will cook the leaves. If these leaves were a bit older, then we'd want to cook them more.
Okay.
But we're just right at the beginning when they're just real fresh popping up.
And we have some lovage for garnish, but I'm going to throw some in as well, just because, again, like that beautiful...
And that flavor is going to come out with that warmth.
Okay, so we've got our bison salad kind of off to the side here. It's resting. And now we're going to start our pea cakes, our sweet pea cakes. So we've got our heavy bottom pan on kind of a medium heat, and we're going to probably just bring it down a little bit. We want that residual heat, so I'm going to turn it up just a touch. And while that's happening, we're going to make the pea cakes. So again, we've got corn, granulated garlic, salt, and baking powder. That's our dry mix. Our wet mix is going to be blended up here, and that will be sweet peas and eggs. We've got our salt and pepper to the side. Because we kind of have a fair amount of lovage, I'm going to throw some into this as well, just to kind of add a little flavor and texture and character. And we do have our vegetable oil that we will be using to griddle the cakes. Eggs. Sweet peas.
Are you going to use the whole can of sweet peas in this recipe?
I am. And again, we drained them off. So I guess if it's, if they're defrosted and rinsed off, frozen, you'd want about 15 ounces. But we're going to go ahead and use the whole can. I'm going to add a little bit of lovage. Again, just to kind of give it a little character. Starting to feel that pan heat up. I'm going to turn it down just a touch. Okay, so we're going to mix our wet ingredients and our dry ingredients. I'm going to pull this off here. When cooking professionally, I always like to use a spatula. When I'm cooking at home, I like to use a spatula. And just, you're going to get everything off the corner. Just make sure you don't lose anything. Like, so for example, I'll pull this out and just kind of make sure I can wrap around, get all the edges.
Don't want to waste.
Nope.
So I really love the FDPIR boxes, and for some folks, they don't realize a long time ago used to be commodity goods. So like 15-pound blocks of cheese. One of the reasons why we make fry bread is because those old commodities, the flour would be somewhat rancid. So one of the ways to hide that flavor would be to mix them and deep fry it in oil and make fry bread. And then that way it was still usable and not wasted.
And that's, those are the things that, fry bread might be traditional, but it's not pre-contact.
Yes.
And I think there's probably a story there that's a little, early in the relationships. And so, I think that, like you said, I think we've come a long ways. I think that it's nice to see on the FDPIR box list, like, that there is wild rice and that there is wild salmon and there is bison. So these more traditional foods that would be offered. But, I don't know, here's to dreaming, right? So I mixed all these ingredients, and, I feel like it's kind of unified. There's not like one lumpy color that's different. You see everything kind of dispersed evenly. And we're going to go for it. So we're going to add this to the griddle with a little oil and have some griddle cakes. Using my senses, you hear that little like soft bubble, but not that. Mm-hmm. So you're not burning. You see the oil kind of cooking all the way around. I'm starting to see a little brown crispiness right here, so that's pretty.
I can tell it's starting to get done because I'm starting to feel hungry.
Yeah, and that too.
And that goes to that smell of when things are cooking and becoming ready.
This is great. You've got that nice color right here. Mm-hmm. But right here, I think that's kind of what we're looking for, like a nice crisp color, cooked all the way through. And then so when you're flipping it, like these ones I'll probably flip back over. You want to probably go from 2/3 the way cooked up. So when you flip it over, you're just kind of finishing it.
Yes.
Making sure it's not too mealy or.
So like a regular pancake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've got our bison salad with our beautiful greens in there. And then we've got our fiddleheads that we've pickled. So they're off to the side. Got some beautiful lovage and chives here as well. So to plate, I'm going to just put one on. Add some of this bison vegetable stew right over the top. And then we're going to garnish with just a few of these. You know, and again, kind of that pickly flavor will just kind of add, like break up some of the richness of the cake and the bison and everything. Got a little bit of the lovage. Again, just beautiful color, contrast. And then, you know, I took these chives, just kind of a few of those right over the top. So here we go. We've got our bison salad with corn cake and foraged vegetables.
Looks delicious.
Ready to enjoy?
I'm so ready.